Jeff Ellsworth, and I want to welcome folks to the City of St. Helena Special City Council meeting Monday, December 7th, 2020. Our assistant to the city manager, Priya Nixon, has information on how to tune into our Spanish interpretation feature. Ms. Nixon, would you walk folks through that, please?
Yes, I can. Thank you so much. Can you see my screen, Mayor Ellsworth?
I can.
Okay, perfect. So tonight's meeting will have live Spanish interpretation. So to access this Spanish interpretation, you'll need to join Zoom via the Zoom app. You can use your cell phone, tablet, or computer. And instructions on how to download and use the Zoom application are listed on our website in English and Spanish. And so once you join the meeting through the Zoom app, you'll want to go down to the bottom or the top of the screen, and there is a little globe, and it will have Spanish interpretation. And so you'll want to click on that. So that is how you can access Spanish interpretation. Thank you.
Thank you. And now I'll move to a special paragraph I read regarding remote meetings in accordance with Executive Order N-29-20 and guidance from the California Department of Public Health on gatherings. Remote public participation is allowed. We will address the order in the following ways. Members of the public may not physically attend meetings. The City Council meeting will be live streamed on Comcast Channel 28 and on the city's website, barring technical difficulties. Those members of the public wishing to participate must do so remotely via Zoom electronic meetings in the following ways: by either logging onto the Zoom link located on the meeting agenda. Please download the app to your computer or mobile device and enter the meeting ID, or by calling a listed number and enter the meeting ID. Public comment for city council meetings will be accepted via email to publiccomment@cityofsthelena.org. All public comments must be emailed by 4 p.m. prior to the meeting. Emailed public comments will not be read out loud, but will be publicly available and attached to the online city council agenda. Ms. Nixon, is there anything else we need to let folks know about remote participation?
Yes, City Manager Prestwich, is it all right for me to talk a little bit about participation for tonight? Okay, wonderful. So this is a little bit of a different Zoom environment. Welcome, everyone. We are all in the same place. Some will have access to their microphone and everyone else is muted. When the mayor calls for public comment, there is a raise hand feature. And what you're going to want to do is use that. So for some folks, it's going to be on the bottom of the screen, for some folks on the top, but there's also a feature. If you click on the bottom or top, you'll see some participant list. And under participants, if you click on that, you'll be able to pull up a little feature that has an actual hand icon. So that's how you will be able to raise your hand during the public comment portion of tonight's meeting. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And now we'll move to our Pledge of Allegiance. If folks would mute your microphones and follow with me, we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And now we'll move to our roll call.
Mayor Ellsworth.
Here.
Vice Mayor Doring.
Here.
Councilmember Coperstein.
Here.
Chateau.
Here.
And Councilmember Knudsen is absent.
Thank you. Now we'll make here's a note about public comment on a special meeting such as this. Under California law, public comments are limited to subjects on the agenda only. Therefore, public comment will take place during consideration of the item. And now we will move to new business. This is the post glass fire community forum to receive feedback on disaster response, including what worked well, opportunities for improvement, and solutions for future disaster mitigation. This meeting is an after incident discussion about what we saw that worked well, what we need to work on. We want to capture community suggestions to improve preparedness. We'll receive updates and insights from our fire chief, police chief, and city manager. We'll build an after incident action plan that captures lessons learned. And I want to welcome Supervisor Diane Dillon, who's with us here tonight, Napa County Supervisor Diane Dillon, our supervisor in this district. I just want to take a moment and reflect back on the challenges of the glass fire, how remarkable the response was from our first responders, from our city staff as well in this emergency situation. Want to thank the council for their efforts and the focus on recovery as we move through this. As we know, we're still in the COVID situation. That's another level of challenge. But the efforts that were put forth by the city, by the county, and by the state through the glass fire were remarkable. And I just want to take a moment and reflect that we're here tonight, and we're going to look at what worked, what we can work on to make better. But I just want to take a moment to look back at those weeks and where we are now, and just be thankful to be here with you all and being able to discuss this now. So I'm going to, with that, hand this over to our city manager, Mark Prestwich. He's going to talk a little bit about tonight's meeting structure and how we're going to be taking comment and working through this. Mr. Prestwich.
Thank you, Mayor. And I also want to invite our assistant to the city manager to speak briefly about the Spanish interpretation, and then I'll provide some introductory comments.
Yeah, sure. I can share again that this meeting will be have live Spanish interpretation. I'm going to share my screen just one more time so that folks who have joined us are able to access the interpretation. So to access the Spanish interpretation, you'll need to download the Zoom app on your cell phone, tablet, or computer. And there are instructions on how to do that on our website. And then once you join, you'll be able to see a small globe at the bottom or the top of your screen. Click on that globe and you'll be able to access the interpretation. And the instructions are in English and Spanish on our website.
So good evening, everyone, and good evening, council members and residents and community members and staff. This is a meeting that I'm sad we have to have, but it's always important after a disaster to look at ways that we can improve. And certainly every disaster reveals opportunities to do even better. We had a meeting similar to this in 2017 after the 2017 fires. And several months after that, the meeting became a source document for what we call an after incident action report. We're going to be preparing a similar report as a result of the LNU complex fires, which we'll hear a little bit about today. But our primary focus is going to be the glass fires. And certainly there are opportunities for lessons learned. And tonight, we are going to hear, I'm going to talk briefly about the outline of our meeting tonight, and then we'll begin with presentations. So tonight, we're first going to hear from our fire chief, Chief John Sorensen, to provide us an overview of the incident. So his presentation will be a little longer than some of the others, just to reacquaint us with the fire itself, to remember some of those moments. In order to rekindle some of those thoughts that we had at the time. Then we're going to hear from our Lieutenant Justin Tharp on behalf of our police chief, our police chief Chris Hartley, who is here in attendance, and will comment a little bit later. I will speak to then some communications outreach that we did with the community after the police presentation. And then we're going to add a brief conversation, well, a conversation about evacuation, because that's a primary source of a lot of the public comment. And there have been a number of questions raised about how decisions are made with respect to evacuations, et cetera. So I want to have a bit of a discussion with our police and fire chief, and we'll share with you some of the questions that are asked of them and some of the issues that we've talked about and even lessons learned from this event. And then we have a group exercise planned where we intend to break the group into different groups, this audience into different groups, have you identify lessons learned and areas of opportunity for improvement, along with areas that that went well from your perspective with respect to the fire. We'll have report outs on those. We'll open it up to formal public comment in case there are any additional comments that people want to make, and then close that and have a council discussion about what everyone heard tonight. So with that, let me introduce our fire chief, John Sorensen, who's going to begin a presentation. Each of the presentations have a brief PowerPoint. John's is a little longer.
Hello, everybody. Mr. Mayor, Mr. Vice Mayor, Council. I have Alec Vidler with me, our fire inspector and admin assistant, but he's at a safe distance. He's going to be helping me with make sure there's no technical difficulties, which there surely would be if I was doing this by myself. So Alec, let's share the screen. Okay, Mark, does everything look good?
Looks ready, John.
Okay, here we go. Glass fire started September 27th, and it was contained on October 4th. Let's go to the next slide. The overview of tonight's presentation, we're going to talk about the St. Helena firefighters and the fire season readiness, the glass fire suppression efforts, the City of St. Helena weed abatement policy, and acknowledgements. And again, this is just a short 20 minutes. If we were to cover everybody that was involved in the fire, over 2,000 personnel, this would be definitely a 3-season on Netflix to include everybody. So we're just going to cover St. Helena and the city limits and some outside area. Fire weather readiness. So there was a red flag that was declared before the event. So when critical levels of the wind, the temperature, and the fuel model reach a certain level, we get put in a red flag warning, which this is what we do at our station. We staff 2 engines and 1 water tender 24 hours a day. And this is what happened for the glass fire incident. All fire equipment is double checked for readiness. Our fuel tank at the station is topped off. Crews briefed on current weather conditions on an hourly basis. All part-time personnel alerted for readiness. We had low humidity, winds light to moderate and variable, meaning in direction. Vegetation at critical low moisture levels, red flag warning declared by NOAA, and we were staffed up for the red flag warning. So this is the initial report of the fire. Sunday, September 27th at 3:48 in the morning. Visible flames and smoke reported in the area of the North Fork of Crystal Springs Road. Originally, there's been a couple different reports who reported it, but Reach Air Ambulance was overhead, and this is what was called in at 3:48. All of these are our engines that responded on the initial dispatch, 417, the engine, the brush. We have 2 brushes, a water tender. We had CAL FIRE, dozers were dispatched, and a battalion chief. Engine 17 from St. Helena Fire Department was first at scene, reports 30 acres of grass and brush with rapid rate of spread. Engines and dozers initially at scene were unable to contain the fire as it spread to an estimated 600 acres by 7 a.m. That's just under a square mile. St. Helena Police Department issues mandatory evacuation order from Deer Park Road to Crystal Springs at 4:21. So that was just about a half hour after. This is a video shot from engine 417, who was second at scene. This is where there were 2 evacuees trapped in a car on the roadway, and they performed a rescue. So we could roll this one, Alec. So this is what they're looking at with about 30 acres on Crystal Springs Road. This was on the North Fork. So you can imagine, you can see the winds blowing. Next slide. And here's a shot of Glass Mountain Inn. This was another difficult situation. Go ahead and roll it, Alec. There's fire all around the inn, and it looked like possibly this would have a good outcome. However, the crews reported that the ground started shaking and a boulder 4 to 6 feet in diameter came rolling down the hill and went right through the inn, and the crews had to back away, and the Glass Mountain Inn did not make it through the fire. So there's a lot of different hazards. There was trees falling, power lines, communication lines falling, bridges burning, and who would think of a boulder, 6 feet tall, like Indiana Jones, coming down the hill and then through the building you're trying to protect. Here's a shot of the water treatment plant. And this is a defensible space project that happened. Well, let's talk about this first. Here's the fire from the glass. This is 5 minutes time lapse. And here's the fire coming. But there was some defensible space action taken with clearing around this structure and the whole freshwater treatment plant that would definitely have had a different outcome. The fire went around, and you can see that it kind of stayed underneath the trees. It wasn't a crowning fire that was in the trees. And I really think that things would have been different, and maybe we would have been on definitely water rationing if we lost the water treatment plant. Here's another shot of the employees at the water treatment plant helping out. We gave them hose and pumps. There's CAL FIRE was there. And like I said, it went past this in 5 minutes, but yet you can see the defensible space and how much the vegetation has been mowed. Here's a before and after. This is the Bill Canyon, and all the area around it burned. All the watershed has been impacted. You can see the vineyards up there, up in the top and on the right of the screen. So this is day one. Fire spreads at 2,000 acres by noon. This is on the east side of Sorod Trail. So from North Fork of Crystal Springs, past Glass Mountain, starting to enter into the Deer Park area, and then north towards Calistoga Ranch, Lamel Road. Okay, this is how we have two fires. So the winds were out of the east, blowing west, and the fire was on the east side of Sorod Trail. This spotted over from embers from the fire on Crystal Springs and went over Sorod Trail and landed at Rumbauer's Winery. So this was now the fires on the other side of Sorod Trail. This fire continued to burn around Rumbauer, burn structures out on this this knoll, and then subsequently it ran all the way across to the castle. This is day one, 7 p.m. Okay, this is a photo taken by Scott Dale on the San Leandro Fire Department. He is at Calistoga Ranch, defending Calistoga Ranch, and he spots a spot fire on Spring Mountain Road. This is 7 p.m., 7:05. Fire spots over the valley floor to Spring Mountain. This spot could have come from the Rumbauer. It could have come from the Crystal Springs area. Then there was, later there was multiple spots, probably 3 different fires that all became one. 834 Sonoma County Sheriff orders evacuation St. Helena Road and Los Alamos Road. 844 Napa County OES mandatory evacuation west of 29 from Deer Park to Elmhurst and all of Spring Mountain Road. 941 mandatory evacuations all of White Sulphur Springs to Whitehall Lane and west to Sonoma County line. And then at 1030, multiple fast moving fires near Los Alamos Road in Sonoma County. So by 1030, it was in Sonoma. As you can see, the bottom fire, that is the fire that spotted over on the west side and ran all the way to Santa Rosa, burned 300 homes. This is the kind of fire activity that was on that side in the first 24 hours. This is an active crown fire. Fire's crowning in the trees. It's not just the understory, but this fire moved, like I said, from Spring Mountain Road all the way to Sonoma in just a couple hours and burned 300 homes. And in Tubbs fire, when you had a 70 mile an hour to 100 mile an hour winds, it went in less time and burned thousands of homes in Santa Rosa and jumped a 4-lane highway to do all that damage. All right, so now we have a fire that's established on top of Spring Mountain Road, and it's moving away towards the west, towards Santa Rosa. So the fire is in areas of Fantasca Winery. It's on Langtree Road. It's up by the Christmas Tree Farm, past the county line in Sonoma County. So what we did, I was in charge of this division. I was in charge of division uniform, which was Ellers Lane to Whitehall Lane, the fire's edge. And then I had the valley floor from Deer Park to Howell Mountain Road, and all the way down to Zinfandel, the valley floor, but not on the other side of Silverado Trail on the west. So I had a couple of dozers, private dozers. So we started, I had them first cut a line, and I was with Jake Cowan from CAL FIRE. He was my boss. He was branch. And so we cut this line. We came right down Fantasca and came around to Jorge Hernandez's property and brought the dozer line all the way down to tie in to Highway 29. So we would keep the fire from flanking and just keep chomping all the way into St. Helena, go through the Culinary Institute, Behringer, and all the homes, Elmhurst and all that. Next slide. So on the right side, the fire back down, that's the red line that you see when you see William Cole, Vineyard 29, Grace, Brasswood. That fire went underneath that vegetation. Yes, it torched out some trees, but it was a backing fire. And it backed into all of these vineyards and homes. And we didn't have the resources, even days, 3, 4, or 5 days into it, to take care of every one of these. We couldn't put a dozer line because it was too much of a slope to side hill and put a dozer line. Plus the dozers were trying in other areas. So we had to go in and defend each structure. This is the dozer line. So from Fantasca Winery up on Spring Mountain Road, this dozer line, I put Johnny White in charge of a couple of these, the same 2 dozers. And I said, Johnny, I got some other things to do. I need you to run these dozers and lead them on the fire's edge and keep it out of St. Helena. So Johnny took them through Spring Mountain Vineyard. He went down by Dean York, Fir Hill, near Newton, and all the way around Sylvaner. And you can see that it's a squiggly line because the fire is not this perfect edge that you can see. And we'll take a flight here in a second. So this is how this fire, again, is a flanking fire. The fire is heading towards Santa Rosa, and it is coming to the left towards St. Helena. Next slide. Okay, so this is the lower reservoir on Spring Mountain Road. This is a little difficult. This is a 30-second drone video, but you can kind of get a look here. If you look at the top right-hand corner, those are some irrigation ponds over by Ellers Lane, Markham, in that area. Everything on my right is not burned. So all that green is where the fire has not gotten to. So the dozer line is right at where the green and the brown is. So let's take this flight. You can see that Spring Mountain Winery, you see all the palm trees down below, Falcon Crest. That's where we're at right now. We're gonna spin around and fly towards the Sylvaner area. And this is a little hard to pick out. And you can see that some of these trees, are burned, but they're not completely consumed. A lot of this fire was torching into the trees, and it was traveling underneath. Now you can see all those brown trees is where the fire was. All those brown trees, it's really hit and miss. It can be burned completely under and you have a green tree, or one can catch fire from ladder fuels. This is Sylvaner on our left, and you can see how close that those brown trees, that fire line, Johnny ran those dozers all the way behind this neighborhood, and then he came around and then tied in with White Sulphur Springs. And then now we're over near Rancho Otranto on Sulphur Springs Avenue. Okay, so this shot is what was developing. This is 4 a.m. on the second day. So you can see way back in the background, you can see those orange glows. The fire was slowing down. The winds were subsiding, and the winds were blowing towards Santa Rosa. So this is behind Behringer Winery on Pratt Avenue. If you're looking straight ahead, you look at the CIA dorms. So we received a call of a spot fire behind Behringer. So I went over there with David Capone with his engine company, and he was able to knock this fire down in just a half acre. But to point out weed abatement, you can see how this field is mowed all the way down to just a couple inches. This would have been a total different outcome if we didn't, if Behringer and everybody else in town who's been fantastic with coming up with solutions to mow their fields and not really being that difficult. This is really an easy town when it comes to weed abatement, but this is why. And you can see where the smoke is blowing. That smoke is blowing south now. It's heading, the fire is blowing back into itself, heading back into itself and south towards Zinfandel Lane. So let's roll them. So they're doing an attack on the fire here. This is a very, very small fire. But if this thing was, you know, chest high grass, it would have been a different outcome if we started losing warehouses on at Behringer. So let's talk about evacuations. Evacuation is a tool to provide safety to a community. The criteria, imminent threat to life, is the number one thing. Fire department identifies potential of imminent threats and makes recommendations to police department for evacuation. Mandatory or advisory. Police department declares evacuation. Repopulation. This is something that a lot of people don't understand what it takes to repopulate something that you evacuated, and it could be damaged or not damaged, severely damaged, and they all have different times. People think, oh, you just flip the switch and you let everybody back in. They must be deemed safe. There's no threat of fire spread or reignition. So remember how long it took to get back into the Sylvaner area, and the fire didn't even burn one house. We lost one house near Fir Hill up on the end of Madrona, but yet it was, I think it was almost a week to get back into your homes. Law enforcement has jurisdictional authority for implementing repopulation. Must be coordinated between fire, law enforcement, water utilities. You got to know that the water's safe, public works, AT&T communications, power, PG&E. They won't, if they don't sign off on it, nobody's going back in. If you have power poles that are damaged, utilities, bridges, we had bridges that were burned out. You have trees that continuously fell even weeks into the incident, and then you have road clearance and road damage before you repopulate. Now let's go back over to the other side of the valley. This is the east side of the valley. The blue line is Silverado Trail. The red line is the fire's edge. Now you can see that this fire is in somewhat not a whole lot of depth. It's somewhat thin because the wind turned, and it started around 3 in the morning on the second day. It started blowing south. So as you can see, the fire never made it down to the vineyard that's up ahead. This is Vineyard Valley Mobile Home Park in the screen, and you have the flood project on the left on the bottom screen. On the far right, that's Pope Street. You're going to have the college and other houses on Pope Street. So the fire on this way, this was a backing fire, and it was moving to the south, which would be to frame right. You can see that it on the red line that the fire did not make it down to the vineyard. It probably backed, and this is what we're getting from the photo. It probably was just underneath the trees, but it was not as aggressive as the west side, which got the evacuations.
Chief Sorensen,
yes.
Chief Sorensen, could you explain what a backing fire is in a little more detail for everyone?
Yes. Backing fire is where the fire is, if there is a slope, the fire is backing down a slope. So just figure you're at the fireplace and you light a match. You have one of those big, long wood matches. You light a match and you hold it horizontally, and the fire will travel very gradual as you hold it horizontally. If you hold your hand and put the tip of the fire down, the flame will go very rapidly up and probably burn your hand. But if you turn that same match and put the match head straight up, that fire will back down very, very slowly, and then most of the time it goes out. With this type of situation, this was a backing fire. It was a flanking backing fire heading to the south. And if you go to the frame right, kind of where the orange, the blue, and the red kind of intermix at the end of Pope Street, that was the closest that we got to the side of the fire. And unfortunately, we lost a home here. And you can see that there's up on that ridge, there's many homes that made it. Look at all those homes. It's just amazing how they made it. And there's one little green spot that's the Schoendorf's property that has an incredible system that is a gel that he has sprinklers on the property, and you can push a button and it emits this gel, and the whole place was just untouched by the fire, and the fire went all the way around it. So Joe's had that system in, Joe Schoendorf has had that system in for years. He's been waiting to push that button, and he did it this time, and it really paid off. But you can see other areas that were saved, and they're still green. So let's move on to here. This is right across Pope Street. This is probably for residents the most scariest, but to us, this is a backing fire. You can see that the fire has not got into the trees. It did torch out some trees, and that, again, this is unfortunately where we lost the structure. This fire burned all the understory, the grass. I was here watching this. Here's a CAL FIRE overhead. He's from Shasta. I don't know who that is, but is on his front bumper as an identifier, but he's Shasta. This is Mark Jones on the frame left. He owns his own fire engine, and he protected this corner. He has 2 fire engines, protected this corner, and he lives right there at Pope in the trail. But this fire was the closest it got. It was monitored. We had 3 engines there, St. Helena PD, myself. I had 20,000 acres of area, so I was running around, but we were monitoring this the whole time. And luckily that the winds all held, and it was backing and blew back into the fire. And then our bigger problem was keeping it out of the south, which was, it kept going down to Taplin, and that's where we stopped it. This was not my division, but I believe in the Taplin Zinfandel area. Go real quick. We had a water tender at Brush, Calistoga Brush 19 to patrol Vineyard Valley, Flood Project, Pope Street, Napa Valley College, Pratt Avenue, and Kid Ranch Road area. You might not have seen them, but they were there. Martin Macias was on Brush 217. He did a great job with David Capone and Calistoga, keeping, as we assigned them there, said any fires get established on the other side, that is a different decision that needs to be made. No fires found on the city west of Silverado Trail and south of Pratt Avenue. We did have the one behind Behringer that I spoke of, and then we did have one behind a residence on Cronulla, and then the wind changed, and that was definitely a game changer. Fire pictured is backing down Silverado Trail. And then this is, again, that column up there, unfortunately, is one St. Helena. That is city limits. This is one that we, that was on St. Helena Highway South. This is one that, this is a guest house that didn't make it, but this is what we were rolling up on. You know, the amount of water that we had, there was 2 people, Martin Macias and Josh Wilmoth. They show up with 200 gallons of water in an old brush unit, and this is all they had. And then we had engine 17 arrive, all with tank water. But fortunately, with a little ingenuity, these firefighters dropped the pump in a pool, and were not able to save the guest house, but they saved the house. And if this was unattended, the house would have went, maybe the neighbors as well. But all CAL FIRE, all the people that helped us from out of county, all different areas, as far as Southern California, they all did a fantastic job. Losses within the city: 2 residential homes, 1 guest house, 3 detached garages, and unfortunately, we got out of this thing with no major injuries, no loss of life. We did have some firefighters get some facial burns, some burns on their hands and wrists from embers in that major fire activity that I showed earlier. I want to thank the firefighters assigned. This was my last assignment until I was qualified as a division, which was a big, took me 3 years to get to this point, but I got signed off this year. And I want to thank all the members of the fire department, St. Helena Fire Department. Engine 17, Mark Macias was running that in crew. David Capone was 317. David Capone stayed in town with his engine and was patrolling night and day. Adam Waters, Brush 17, he was at Calistoga Ranch. He was at the initial attack. 217, Martin Macias, he was at the water treatment plant all over town. Everybody was. Jose Rodriguez on 417, Scott Dale on the water tender. Utility 17, Nick Salakian would, when I would have to go to briefing and I would get a couple hours of shut-eye, Nick would take over the division for me. And then Johnny White also, as he was heavy equipment boss on division uniform. He did a fantastic job. Weed abatement, what are we gonna do about it? So this is our policy for the city. In the city limits, the following must occur by June 1st. Dead, decayed, diseased, or hazardous trees, weeds, and overgrown, uncultivated vegetation, which are hazardous or may cause a danger to public safety, must be cut and or removed to a maximum of 4 inches in height. And fortunately, this town is incredibly easy when it comes to weed abatement. You know, if they don't clear their lot, we'll post it, or most of the times I just knock on the door and they go, oh my God, I'll get on it right away. And they do. And I got to tell you, and I've said this many times before, this town compared to others in this county is very, very easy to work with. We have a couple of stubborn ones, but all in all, this town is very fantastic. This is on CAL FIRE's website and our website. I think the pamphlets, I know Diane Dillon has given these out so many times. So have I. I think pallets of these things have gone out. They're online. You can get them anywhere. It's a very simple, it's like in a cartoon. They even have the car backed in so you're ready to go facing out. You've got your different zones, the height. They talk to you about ladder fuels. This is where the grass catches, then it catches a bush, then a bigger bush, then into the trees. Those are called ladder fuels, how it ladders up. We talk about defensible spaces. I know this kind of got jumbled here on Google Maps. This is William Cole Winery, present day. And you can see all the vegetation of the big trees in the background. And then you have the vineyard in the foreground here. But let's go back 140 years, 120 years. Here's William Cole Winery. That's on the left there. The Victorian was apparently deemed not safe, so the fire department used it back in, I think, the 20s to use it as a training exercise. But you can see in the back, where's the trees? All those trees are new because you can obviously see that those hills are bare. There's just a few trees here and there. Now, if you're in 1880, 1900, and all you have is buckets of water, this isn't that difficult to defend if you had a backing fire, a flanking fire to defend, because there's just the vegetation's just not there. And you say, where does it go? Well, it went right here. This is how we built the town, the wineries, and all the mansions and the little houses in town. Timber harvested out of Hell Mountain, all different places. So that's where it went. Looking back at William Cole on your right, and then Morlaix on the left. This is when you look at a poster child of an excellent defensible space. Morlaix is probably the best around. I'm sure that in the back there's probably Vineyard in the future. But when you look at the house and there's no trees up against the winery, everything is nice, and all the vegetation is far away. They got a pool. That one is just poster child of defensible space, especially in a winery. If the fire was rolling towards that would be the safest space to be. Here's another one. I took this up in Cobb. I have a cabin up there, and I would always drive by there and say, man, this guy has got to do something about the vegetation up against the building. Before, on my left, I took this right before the Valley Fire, and that fire started up on Cobb and ran downhill with incredible rates of spread. This house just didn't have a chance. And if you could look on the right, you can see with the outcome, that's a foundation through the power lines. You could see there at the top of the hill. And that is undefendable, absolutely undefendable. If you live in something like that, you need to get to work. At the end, blast fire statistics, the acreage was 67,000 acres, 282 structures damaged, 1,555 structures destroyed, more than 2,000 personnel assigned. That's not all firefighters. That's everybody that's on the fire. It could be people that are working administration, finance, the ground crews, keeping the engines running. And then the best thing is there was no fatalities and no major injuries reported. And I want to thank all the firefighters that helped from all over California that came up. We didn't get as many as we wanted, but the ones we got, we just worked extra hard and got the job done. Calistoga Fire Chief Steve Campbell, who sent Brush 19 up for a week, was fantastic. Thank you, Steve. Cal Fire engines, hand crews, and chiefs, they're all fantastic. And special thanks to Jeff Bellier, who was the incident commander. Jason Martin was plans, and thank Mark Presswich and the city staff. They were all fantastic. It was all I heard from them is, what do you need, Chief? Chief Hartley was there the whole time, and the San Leandro Police Department, Justin Tharp, all the officers were fantastic. What they did on evacuations on Spring Mountain was amazing, and all their personal protective gear was a bulletproof vest that really doesn't do any good when it comes to going into those situations. San Leandro residents who donated food, supplies, and time. All those firefighters on there, I'll call out Doug Schaefer for all those people on Fur Hill that were helping us defend their own homes. That was very critical. They had eyes. There's nothing that we didn't. There was eyes on the fire the whole time. It was amazing. Plus my phone blowing up on text messages. It was really hard to defend your own town. It's easy when you're in somebody else's and nobody knows you. But retired Cal Fire heavy equipment operator and retired Assistant Chief Mike Griffin. Mike put in, he's been on a dozer from Vietnam, pushing jungle all the way to Cal Fire when he retired. And I used Mike to help me with make some decisions with dozer line placement. And Mike was just a great asset. And Alec Vidler, fire inspector and admin assistant, helping me with everything, keeping the firehouse, all the calls coming in. It was just nonstop. So thanks to Alec. And that's what I have here. Yeah.
Chief, thank you very much. That was just an excellent presentation, and thank you to all those firefighters and first responders. It's just remarkable. We're going to move now to hear from Lieutenant Tharp on the police activities. I just wanted to mention with Supervisor Dillon on the line, after Mark Presswich is going to do some overview of communications, but if you had any thoughts before we move into the group exercise in a few minutes, I just wanted to put that out there, that we'll be going through the police activities and communications after that. If you had any thoughts to add, that would be great.
Can I just add one clarifying question, Mayor?
Yes.
You know, the backing fire is an important concept, and as I understand it, Chief Sorensen, you're taking advantage of the wind to a certain degree, right? So the fire is going into the wind, correct? And you're hoping that that wind will keep it from moving or have it move at a very slow pace. Is that sort of how it works?
Yes. The fire is, if it's heading down a hill, and the wind is blowing up the hill, it's going to be even slower coming down. If there was no wind, it might progress faster.
Thank you.
Are there any other council comments or questions at this point? We're going to circle back to public comment after the presentations and public questions, but are there any other questions from council at this point before we move to Lieutenant Tharp? I am seeing none, so we'll move to Lieutenant Tharp. Thank you, Chief Sorensen.
I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Give me just a second here. Okay. So good evening, everyone. Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, City Council, and members of the community. This is just a slight or a quick overview of our St. Helena Police Department's response in the LNU lightning and complex fire and the glass fire. The reason we bring up the LNU lightning complex fire is there's a couple little differences. I just kind of want to go over those. I think it's important to make note. Let me move my. So in the LNU, the city of St. Helena had mandatory evacuations east of Silverado Trail, but it was a very minimal amount of compared to the glass fire. The police department used a minimal amount of staff within town, patrolling its own area. Most of our overtime during that fire was devoted to the county of Napa in mutual aid. We didn't have any extra dispatchers on during that fire. And during that fire, because it moved up into Lake County, several St. Helena police officers were evacuated from their homes. Some of them not once, but twice. They moved to a safe place and then got moved a second time because it was deemed unsafe again. The lightning complex fire, some of the things that were just a little different. It was a dynamic changing fire. Evacuation orders required police action. It was right around us. We had a larger swath of the town that was evacuated on the west side and the east side, and the whole town eventually was under a evacuation warning. Early on in the fire, we did provide mutual aid to the county of Napa, but we quickly ended up clawing back our personnel, realizing that we were going to need them in town. And we dedicated patrols to evacuated areas or sections of the city. We ended up putting an additional dispatcher on duty because we found we were kind of the hub up valley. We had people come in asking for ag permits so they could get into the fire area, asking how they could go see their home, asking how long they were going to be evacuated. And these things take the dispatcher away from the phone and the radio. So we ended up running 2 dispatchers almost the whole time. We actually, in this fire, end up asking for mutual aid to shut down or do hard closures within the city. What assistance was provided? This is more for like mutual aid. This is what we do, and we keep saying mutual aid. This is really what it means. We provide coverage for 12-hour shifts, both day and night. We assist with evacuation orders directed by Cal Fire Incident Commander in the county of Napa. We patrol evacuated areas to prevent unlawful acts such as burglary, looting, and theft. We control entry and egress points of evacuated areas, allow for movement of resources, including personnel, equipment. Resources include firefighters and utility companies. When you have people looky-loos that are in there in the area, it actually slows down the movement of equipment. And that goes during the fire and after. If you can keep people out just a little longer, your power comes on quicker, your water comes on quicker because they can work unfettered without having to work around people. Escorting residents into the evacuated area, check on residents that elect to stay. Some people refuse to evacuate. And those people sometimes end up needing stuff like water and gasoline to run generators. So we try to be as helpful as we can. We were even asked in the last incident to help feed animals. There's some funny video of us chasing chickens around, trying to get them back in the pen and get them fed up. Okay, during the glass fire. So the previous slide, that was what we do on mutual aid. We ended up doing that in our own town on the glass fire. The dispatchers supplied N95 masks to the community upon request. We requested the mutual aid, as I said, for Spring Street and Valley View road closure and Madrona and Fur Hill. Police volunteers assisted with escorts of evacuees into the city's evacuated areas, retrieve essential items, such as medication and documents. And we communicated with at-risk communities on the availability of evacuation centers, hotel room, and transportation if necessary. The county had at the ready buses to move people if needed, and it was determined or asked for by a at-risk community. The chief and lieutenant, which would be myself, attended repopulation meetings at the Incident Command in Santa Rosa twice a day. This would have been later on in the fire. As the fire starts to progress, they have what they call a repopulation meeting. It's a giant map where we start to discuss opening certain areas. These meetings evaluate evacuate areas for repopulation. Repopulation occurs after the fire was not a threat and all major utilities are deemed safe. And what I realized, everybody has a different level of these utilities of what they deem safe. PG&E won't leave a wire regardless if it's live or not on the ground. AT&T, if a line's touching, they don't worry about it. Comcast has to have all their lines off the ground. So everyone has a different rate of repair, and you'll see that as you're at these meetings. And that's why sometimes people want stuff open right away, but that's why we're kind of pulling back or waiting, is to see if we get the approval from all these utilities. It also includes public works in those areas, Caltrans, things of those natures. The chief or myself attended both the County of Napa and the city's Emergency Operations Center meetings, your EOC meetings. We opened a charging station in Lyman Park to facilitate cell phone charging during the operation. And while this is all going on, all normal police functions still were in operation. That would be domestic violence to accidents, to you name it, anything we would normally handle on a daily basis. So a little bit of additional information. 2 St. Helena police officers were treated for smoke inhalation. One is still currently undergoing some treatment. Evacuated areas are not always opened immediately. This is to allow unfettered movement of fire personnel and utilities. And what I mean by this is sometimes we don't open an area because the fire is just beyond it. And again, we want to be able to move that equipment and not men, but personnel through that area unfettered, so it moves quickly and freely. Window open evacuate area is a collaborative effort between the police department, fire department, and utilities. All must agree the area is safe for repopulation. And updated fire department information was in the front of the police department, updated by the city's PIO. I think they did a fabulous job putting this together, and it was always up to date. And I just kind of wanted to give them a plug because they did a phenomenal job. And that's it for me tonight. It was just a quick overview. If there's any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. I'm sorry, Mayor, but you're muted.
Appear to be muted. Sorry about that. Yeah, Lieutenant Tharp, thank you for the excellent presentation, and want to thank you and the entire department for the work you do and putting your lives on the line every day to protect this community. And your response in that multi-level emergency was just remarkable. So we want to say thank you. Are there council
Councilmember Chateau had a question.
I do. Thank you. I echo all of that gratitude. It's just amazing. And I'm so appreciative of everything that was done. I was curious when you said that with the communication for the at-risk community about the buses and what was available for them, could you give us more detail on how that happens?
Yes, I actually called. We were notified by the county EOC that there was buses available to move at-risk communities. So we called. I called the owner. I did this personally. We called Vineyard Valley, Silverado Orchards, and then the chief and I actually went out because we couldn't get a hold of. We found out there was a switch in management at Woodbridge Village, so we actually went out and contacted him in person. And actually, let me correct myself. He was actually not there, but one of the residents got him on the phone. We were able to contact him and let him know that what we had, and nobody at the time needed it, but it was available if needed.
Very good. Are there any other council comments, questions before I move back to Mr. Presswich? Seeing none, I will bring it back to Mr. Presswich.
Thank you, Mayor. And I'm going to have our assistant to the city manager also share a screen. And so this will just be a brief overview of the external communications. One of the benefits that we had coming into this fire, in addition to essentially the practice in 2017 that led to a number of recommendations, the LNU fire 3 weeks prior really helped us from an organizational structure. And frankly, the COVID disaster In March, we implemented an emergency operations center at the city. That center has been operational daily since March. At the beginning of the COVID disaster, those meetings were held multiple times per week. At this time, we're having meetings once per week, but the organizational structure is in place. And one of the attributes of that structure is that we have an enhanced public information officer role. So we have 3 different people. And of course, at this time, during this fire, we were dealing with other emergency type activities as well, whether it was a PSPS, a heat disaster, the ongoing COVID challenges, recovery from the LNU complex fire, and this new fire. So these are the typical communication methods that we employ when communicating with the residents. We built a website for the Glass Fire and Glass Fire resources. That website link is still available on the city's website. It inventories all of the press releases that were issued for the disaster. It includes links to a variety of resources. And I want to thank our PIO staff for the work they did in updating that, building and updating that website. From beginning to end with respect to this fire, we issued 47 press releases. Generally, we found a pattern of morning, early afternoon, mid-afternoon, and evening worked best for our communication. So we essentially settled into that pattern after a day or so, sustained that for about a week, and then dropped off once the fire threat began to subside to the city. These press releases were translated into Spanish. We endeavored to do that as quickly as possible because information, when we issue press releases, it's information that comes quickly. In most cases, they were translated fairly quickly. There was one weekend where we had some challenges and we made some adjustments to our procedures in order to address the challenges associated with that. We have an email news subscription service that's on our website. People can subscribe to news. It's democratic in the sense that you can choose what you want to subscribe to, whether it's council agendas, emergency information, city news, etc. So we communicate with a number of people via that platform. I believe it's over 2,000 email addresses now. So every time we issue a press release, it also goes out on that e-news platform. That same press release is shared on Facebook. It's shared on Nextdoor, and it's also shared on our fire information boards that Lieutenant Tharp talked about in front of the police station at 1480 Main Street. So we built a board. The good news is we had a lot of practice 3 weeks earlier. It wasn't too difficult to find the board and bring it back. Our PIOs kept that board up to date, as Lieutenant Tharp indicated. It was helpful also because our dispatchers were just a few steps away and could keep an eye on the board, help answer questions. The public could walk into the police station and get questions answered. We also had digital message boards that directed the public to the fire information boards and our website for more information. The fire information boards are intended to be a redundant solution in case of power outage, and we did have residents without power during the incident. And it is foreseeable that anyone that lives west of Highway 29 and east of Silverado Trail may lose or will lose power during a fire incident because PG&E will shut down those lines in order to reduce the probability of a fire starting or damaging the area more. So this is an overview of the way we typically communicated. I really want to thank Stephanie Yakabachi, who we designated as our designated public information officer for this event. Stephanie worked through the night on that first night from early morning on Sunday through the night and into Monday morning. I know she was very exhausted. I participated with her in reviewing press releases before they were issued. Sometimes we would make edits, other times that they were ready to go. She had a lot of cooperation from our police and fire departments. And I too want to echo the comments from our police and fire chiefs regarding the work of our firefighters, our law enforcement personnel, and really all of our city staff. We're not highlighting tonight the work of our public works department, but they had done had done and did an amazing amount of work during this fire. And you've probably read stories about some of the efforts that they did to prepare the water treatment plant and work alongside firefighters to defend it. So my thanks to all of our staff, CAL FIRE, and others as well. And I'm happy to answer any questions that the council has about communications.
Are there any initial questions from council, comments? I just want to make a quick comment. City staff, administrative staff was remarkable. The PIOs, the public information officers, the administrative staff, it was heroic. The movement from day-to-day operations into emergency operations, as we've seen all through COVID, our staff has been nimble and flexible and able to handle these challenges. So it's remarkable. And so thanking the administrative staff, the PIOs, and then, as you mentioned, our public works staff risking their lives fighting to save our water treatment plant. We're really fortunate as a community to have this type of dedication. I want to just make a note too, as well, that some of the challenges came through the fire, the intensity of the fire hitting infrastructure related to PG&E and AT&T and the mobile carriers. And one of the things that's challenging as it was, the dialogue now with PG&E, with our mobile carriers is better and better and better. And the more we work together, and unfortunately, these incidents happen, but one thing comes of it is that our communication does improve, our dialogue with our partners, with the county, with the state, and with companies like PG&E, AT&T, T-Mobile, Sprint, et cetera. We, even though it was a challenging situation, everybody was communicating well through it to get to solutions. So I want to put that out there. I just wanted to check in with Supervisor Dillon to see if she had any thoughts at this point before we move to our group exercise.
Thanks, Mayor, for the opportunity. I echo the sentiments that you expressed in terms of appreciation to St. Helena Fire and St. Helena Police for their efforts as a St. Helena resident. And it was really, we thought we had been through a horrible situation in 2017, and it was having 23 fires, I think, simultaneously occurring in the state, complicated the situation. And I think I'd like to remind folks that there were external factors that our local systems were able to, they were able to still do what they needed to do to protect us. And we had no fatalities, unlike many other places. And we're very grateful for that. Some of the systems we put in place after 2017, the high-low sirens, which was an invention of from the creativity of our sheriff's office, and the evacuation tags, and some of the other things that we put in place, we saw those play out and be used and give people confidence in government's ability to respond. So there were a lot of pluses. I want to compliment St. Helena on its communications as well. You did a really, really great job. And I was at the water treatment plant, in fact, about a half hour after the fire had been through there. And again, another great job. So there are a lot of things to applaud here. The county is going to be doing its after action process starting it in March. We have hired, because of the enormity of what's before us, we're hiring a company that we put an RFP out. We haven't hired the company yet. We'll be doing an after action report for LNU complex, the Hennessy fire, and then a separate one for the glass fire. And so we don't have that process in place yet. Those two fires together burned about 2/5 of the entire county. So it's an enormous process to engage in the after action report. We are going to do that. And so look for community meetings to occur March, April timeframe. Thanks.
Thank you, Supervisor. And now we'll move back to Mr. Presswich, who's going to walk us through our group exercise for this evening.
Thank you, Mayor. And before we jump into the group exercise and begin to receive feedback, I want to convene a bit of a discussion about the early decisions and also the decision-making structure that goes into evacuations. And this is intended to help raise awareness of the complexity of those decisions, the dynamics of the fire itself, as well as the structure, so that when we have the conversations in a group setting, we have a little more context for recommendations that our community would provide. And so I'm going to invite our police chief, our fire chief, and our police lieutenant to join me in just a bit of a conversation about the early morning hours. So I received a phone call early in the morning on Sunday, shortly after 4, and Chief Sorensen and Chief Hartley, Lieutenant Tharp, can you talk to us about the structure of decision-making in the morning, let's say between 4 a.m. and noon on, and then just sort of walk through the first day or two of how the decision-making was occurring. And then what we're looking also for, the fire chief talked about some of the general criteria for decision-making, but I'm looking for also your lessons learned on what might be done differently, or what are some of your takeaways from what you experienced in the first 48 hours of this event? Because we know that this fire moved a lot quicker than what happened in 2017, or even the LNU complex. The glass fire was remarkably dynamic and fast. So let's talk a little bit about how that happened.
Well, Mark, this is Chief Hartley. Thank you for having put this together tonight. Thank you, Mayor and City Council members, and Supervisor Dillon for attending this and help facilitate this. I was sound asleep in a campground that weekend up near Clear Lake, and the call came out. I ran down the hill, hauling a fifth wheel trailer. I had my wife basically boot me out of the truck as she continued to Napa. And from there, it was about 48 or more hours straight. Decisions were being made before my feet even hit the ground. Evacuation orders were being given throughout the county. The nixles were coming in quite frequently as the fire moved. I was in close communications with Chief Sorensen, who had eyes on at the time, and he was in communication with the county fire chief, or Cal Fire Chief, that was responsible for the incident. The initial EOC was set up well north of town, and it basically started out as a pickup truck bed. That's kind of how my first 24 hours went. I made sure that we provided support for the county when they requested it. I also made sure that we had enough to take care of our own should the fire come closer than what it did at that period of time. I made assignments throughout the department as far as supervision went and what we needed where. Lieutenant Tharp played a large role with handling the tasks that I gave him, which included contacting the sensitive populated areas within town, including Stonebridge, Hunts Grove, Woodbridge, Silverado Orchards, and Vineyard Valley. And who he wasn't able to get a hold of, I would contact myself. Again, it was rapidly approaching the city of St. Helena, so we needed to have eyes on. There are definitely lessons learned throughout this. There was a lot of decisions being made above me that I became aware of by a nixle instead of a phone call. There's more conversations that need to be had. What I learned most importantly from this was the communication between us and higher authority. If I'm not getting instant communication, I can't sit there and wait on it. I need to find out where the communication is occurring and why I'm not receiving it. It was like Lieutenant Tharp said earlier on, LNU fire, that seemed to move very smoothly. During the 2017 fire, we were not impacted as we were this time. So I think we all have been able to take lessons from this moving forward. That I could have made some decisions differently if I would have had the information then that I do now. You know, like our mayor always says, St. Helena strong all day long. We pulled through this together as a team. I'm very grateful for the assistance that we received. And I will turn this over to Chief Sorensen.
All right. Well, at the beginning, when I learned about this, I was assigned to the Creek Fire down in Fresno County. You all know when that fire happened, when the Chinook helicopters evacuated the hikers. It was that fire. And I woke up to Johnny White texting me saying, hey, there's a fire, Crystal Springs. That fire, I called a few other firefighters to say, what do you think? Well, it's just a couple hundred acres. It's hung up. It's going to run up towards Deer Park, probably going to stop around above Friesen Lakes, maybe it'll go towards Burgess Cellars, and it'll probably stop there, everything fine. And then within an hour later, it says, no, I don't think so. Chief, you better come home. So I went to the division chief that was running the fire, Jim McDougall from Fresno Kings, and he says, no, we got to get you home. So he cut me loose, and I went home as fast as I could. I got stopped at the Rio Vista Bridge was up, and a big freighter was going by. So I went code 3 past all the cars and had a nice chat while I was waiting for the bridge to come down with some people on the roadway. And then I made myself back up to St. Helena just after lunch. And then I met up with Jeff Bellier at the Incident Command Post, which is at LNU headquarters up on Big Tree Road. And he wanted me to take a division, which I did. And fortunately, he assigned me to St. Helena, which I know the best. And it was probably my most difficult assignment ever because everybody knows me. And my text messages were just rattling off, most of them from Mark Presswich saying, give me an update, give me an update. I had to go search through those, but it was paying off like a penny slot hit a million. And I was, that's how it unfolded for me. But the challenge is, I think, was the like Diane mentioned, that there was 23 other fires. And the requests were going in, Chief Bellier, the incident commander, and was putting in the request, and they just were not showing up. You just look at the road and there's nothing coming up the road. And then finally, after days, we did get some engines rolling in, and a lot of the firefighters were just flipped from the whole summer. I mean, it started in August. I was gone 72 out of 84 days during the summer helping other communities. And it pays back. We go and help them, then they come and help us. And I've seen many firefighters that came up and they all knew me. Hey, John, how you doing? You were down there helping us down there in Culver City or Ventura. But I think that was the most difficult, was the not enough resources for the fire that we had. I think it was probably 25%, 30% what we should have had. But we got it done, and the wind really changed, and that definitely helped out. Not like the Tubbs fire, which was so intense at those first hours, where I couldn't even stand on Tubbs Lane. The fire was so intense. But this one was definitely difficult. And in Santa Rosa, we're not even talking about, they had the head fire. They had the fire heading right towards them, and it burned down. I mean, it wasn't even in their county, and this fire showed up and took out 300 of their homes. Well, the second time, took out thousands over there in Coffee Park. So I definitely feel for them over there. Any other questions?
In terms of, let's say, 12 hours into the fire, talk to us a little bit about how the decisions are being made on how to evacuate, whether it's a mandatory or an advisory warning type evacuation. Is that something that you as the fire chief are issuing? Is it the police chief? Can you talk to us a little bit about the structure of the decision-making and what would happen in a perfect world versus the dynamics of this event?
I can speak on that a little bit. In a perfect world scenario, when a major incident occurs, there would be police or law enforcement embedded in the EOC of, if it's a state-run disaster, or if it's a county run, then the locals would have their place in that EOC. When the EOC starts out in a pickup truck bed of a fire truck, it's a little bit difficult to send people to where they need to go. In the perfect world, the local chiefs would be present at the EOC to participate and gather the information needed from the fire personnel, the weather personnel, and based off of realistic suggestions, law enforcement would go back to their jurisdiction and make that call on what needed to be evacuated and what type of evacuation order would be given.
Anything to add, Chief Sorensen?
No, Chris hit it.
Ms. Chateau, did I see a hand?
Yes, I'm just not following who made the evacuation calls.
Oh, okay. So how it happens is in the field, if you were to draw a map, a division has an area of the map. Okay, that's a division supervisor. Then there could be 3 divisions, let's just say from Whitehall to Ellers was mine, and then now Ellers to Diamond Mountain was another one. Okay, and then in those divisions, let's say you get 2 or 3 divisions, and then you have a branch director. A branch runs those divisions. Okay, then the branches report to the operations. Operations answers to the incident commander. So if you're seeing a situation on the ground, the division, his or her area, then you would make that decision or that observation, say, okay, the fire's traveling at this, it hopped this road. Then you would send that to branch. Branch would bump it up to operations. Then operations and the incident commander would make the call to what to evacuate from this street to that street. And some of that is done not over the air, because it causes a lot of panic when you're just talking about. You just say the word evacuation and you put any word after it, and that is to people, that is what's going to happen. So that situation really needs to be, sometimes there's a face-to-face, and the operations will come down and say, okay, this is what's happening. And those evacuations, I didn't call those on the west side of town. That was above me. And picking out the streets, Spring Street to White Sulphur and what have you.
John, I'd like to add that these discussions and in the operations room, once they had it all the EOC fully functioning, you cannot take cell phones into those rooms. You cannot take pictures when you're in those rooms. Credentials are shown before you go in there. And it's very, very sensitive.
Ms. Koberstein, I'm seeing a hand.
Thank you. I still find this kind of confusing as to who is actually making the call. I think in the past, we had been told that it was the county EOC that determined when to issue evacuation orders. And I'm not quite sure I understand what you're saying at this point, that you have information and you provide it to them. Who actually issues the order?
Law enforcement does, Mary. The chief of police.
So you were issuing the evacuation orders that were?
During this, the communication was not there from higher up, and they were making those decisions for us, unbeknownst to how it was supposed to have been played out.
And I think it's important to put a little perspective on this one. At the beginning of the event, some events move beyond, a city declares a disaster when the challenges are beyond the capacity of the city. and they asked the county to consider helping us with the disaster. If it becomes beyond the capacity of the county, they ask the state for help, and beyond the state, the federal government. This is an event that went from local to state essentially overnight, within a few hours. And decision-making in that context, this is a fire that's in Napa County and in St. Helena initially, and then also Sonoma County. So the CAL FIRE is CAL FIRE is the state fire association. The county contracts with them for services. The city partners with CAL FIRE for response to various incidents. And in this event, in the first, and correct me, Chief Sorensen or Chief Hartley, in this case, early decisions, remember it's a Sunday morning, very early, decisions are being made quickly by the incident commander, who is a state employee. In this case, it happens to be the county fire chief working under the CAL FIRE organization, that has to make decisions quickly as the fire dynamics change to evacuate areas that create safety and reduce the threat of harm to an individual. So if you remember, in the early morning of Sunday, we had some evacuations late into Sunday night, and then we had 2 more evacuations in the city of St. Helena on the west side of town. One after midnight, another after 2 a.m. And those were sort of incremental evacuations that took place. I think, and then as the fire, started to move south in the early morning, and Chief Sorensen, I think when we've talked about this, between 2 a.m. and 4 a.m. on Monday morning was sort of the time that the fire was moving from Deer Park into Meadowood. And again, quick decisions have to be made. It's still before 5 a.m. on Monday morning. And decisions for evacuation were made by this emergency organizational structure on the east side of Silverado Trail. Is that right at that time?
That's correct. And even, oh, sorry, go ahead.
And the decision that the incident commander makes is often informed by firefighter personnel and eyes on the ground. And if there's a law enforcement personnel available for consultation, there's a discussion that occurs before a decision is made, and they take into consideration a number of factors, whether it's the wind direction, the threat to homes and people, and a number of other factors. Is that representative of the decisions that were being made in the early morning of Monday morning?
That's correct.
And as the emergency matures, it becomes more formalized. And I think when we look at the public comment that we received, Chief Sorensen talked about the Vineyard and the separation, but it doesn't mean that we wouldn't make decisions differently with the hindsight of time. And I think that when we look at this particular event, there are probably warning opportunities for our own city to issue evacuation warnings in areas that were not issued, that represent a lesson learned, right, from an organizational communication standpoint. Is that a fair representation?
Yes, it is.
Okay. So I think one of the lessons learned that I have, I've talked to some of our personnel about forcing communications early with that comprehensive structure. And the other lesson learned is we do have ownership over some of those decisions, and we can exercise that. Our challenge sometimes is not having the knowledge that the incident commander at a statewide level has, with all the resources and the eyes on the ground and the various branches that they're working on. And that's I think part of the challenge that we have preparing ourselves for the next disaster. enhancing the communication is always an area of opportunity coming out of a disaster. But I think when I look at this event, that's the area where there is an opportunity to do more from a communication standpoint. So
I'm seeing Mary. I'm seeing Mary with a hand up. Mark, if you had a thought to finish, I didn't mean to interrupt you there.
we'll take the question.
Mary?
I think what I'm hearing is a little bit different than the 2017 fires, where my impression was that the city was always being very careful not to contradict or step in front of the county EOC, which was issuing evacuation orders and notices and warnings. And if I understand you now, what you're saying is you feel that maybe the city could be more proactive in a case like this and say something before the order comes down. Is that, am I mischaracterizing what?
A little bit different. The 2017 fire was a fire that was being managed at the state. It really, the county EOC learned about decisions a little bit after the fact that we weren't aware of decisions at the county level or at the city level until some of those statewide decisions were made. They had their own incident command center that was in a different location than the county's EOC. We and other cities placed a member of our own staff, embedded them in the county EOC as a city liaison. In the COVID environment and the dynamics of this fire, it happened so fast that we didn't have that opportunity initially. But I think one of the differences this time is that we, through the conversations we've had in the aftermath of this event, we understand through these conversations that we have more ownership over some of those decisions and more muscle that we can exercise than we did. And if there is a dynamic in town that we think is representative of, let's say, an earlier warning, then what I'm communicating to you is we have the control to do that. And I think we have an awareness now that we can exercise that. And of course, we would want to communicate that any decisions with evacuation, with incident command, think in both the glass fire and the 2017 fires, think of those as, know that those were still managed by the state through statewide personnel. But as Supervisor Dillon indicated, the state was really stretched thin. So those external resources, even the support that we had in 2017 was much larger statewide because the resources weren't stretched thin as they were this time. So a lot more decisions had to be made locally. And I think what the Chief Hartley and I have talked about is we have an opportunity to exercise that leadership a little bit more than we did in certain cases. And that's a lesson learned that comes from all of this. And what we're looking to transition to now is an exercise that will receive even more feedback about what went well and where we can do better. And I will pause because you may have additional questions about evacuation procedures that we can try to answer for everyone, for council members.
Any other council comment or question? I'm seeing Ms. Chateau.
Just one more. If there had been an evacuation at Vineyard Valley or one of these other areas, what kind of support do they get so that they're aware of it and helping with the flow of traffic? We had a lot of comments about that, and I realized I wasn't aware of some of those details and would love to hear a little bit more about that.
Chief Hartley, do you want to comment on that, or
Yeah.
I'm happy to take the lead on that?
Go right ahead.
Okay, so in city EOC calls, what we do is at the city level, just because the county has an operational emergency operations center and the state incident command is managing the event, it doesn't mean that we're not talking every day about what we can do to shore up communications or address operational needs of the organization, et cetera. And so one of the, I don't remember which day it is. I think both of us would have to go back to our records to look at this. But one of the early questions was if we need to evacuate vulnerable populations, let's make sure that the county EOC knows that we need help. And so we asked for assistance with transportation in the event transportation would be required. And what we did proactively was, as Lieutenant Tharp indicated, is we contacted a number of facilities to let them know that people could voluntarily leave if they wanted, and we could bring buses, and we had drivers, names, telephone numbers, and buses available to take people. We don't put that in a press release, but we did contact those various locations and talk to the management, talk to a representative of the organization, asked them if they had anyone that would want to go to an evacuation center, and we would have coordinated that transportation to them. When we asked, as Lieutenant Tharp indicated, we didn't have any volunteers at that point. And if it had been a mandatory evacuation, the high-low sirens that were discussed earlier would have been utilized to make sure people were aware of the fact that something was different. And Chief Hartley, in the high-low sirens, do we use audible speakers as well off the vehicles?
Yes, we do. We have our PA systems going that the high lows will be going, the PA will interrupt it so that your voice will come over the radio, through the speaker.
So that happened in some areas of town, but not in areas where a warning was issued. A warning was essentially be prepared in case there is a mandatory evacuation ordered.
That is correct.
Okay. Is there anything else you'd like to add, Chief Hartley, to my response to that question?
I'd just like to add that on even in the warning areas, our officers that were not responding to calls or tied up with something else were going door to door to check on residents and to advise them of the warning or make sure that they had received information of it via Nixle or the city website.
Okay. Any other council questions?
Thank you so much.
I'm seeing none here at the moment. Mark, and so we're going to move into our group session, and you're going to sort of walk us through that protocol a little bit.
Yes, we have about 50 people attending. Some of them are staff, and some of them I notice are firefighters. So maybe there are about 40 members of the public present. What we'd like to do is assign everybody. What we're essentially doing is similar to 2017, but we're in this digital environment. So we're basically going to put you around a table that's not a table of 50 people, but a table of about 6 or 7 people, where we want you to identify a person that can take notes and report out to the group. And what we're looking for is each group to answer 2 questions. What worked well, and where can we do better, and how? We expect that at least 20 minutes, maybe 30 minutes will be needed for each group to kind of walk through those questions and ensure that each person in that group setting has an opportunity to speak and share. What we'd like to do is report out on themes and recommendations and observations after we pull people from those breakouts back to this group. And then we'll also reserve a public comment period for anyone that would like to speak in addition to the group setting before we turn it back to the council for a conversation. All of this material and the recommendations that the community provides is source material for this after action report that in 17, we finished that report in about April of 2018. So I would imagine it's spring of probably 2021 before we see the comprehensive report that will be brought back. Our police chief, Chief Hartley, will be responsible for drafting that, and we'll present that to the city council at a future council meeting in early 2021. Our council members, myself, Chief Hartley, Lieutenant Tharp, and Chief Sorensen, have the ability to float between these rooms, these virtual rooms that we will create. We are available to answer questions. We're available to help if there is a question, but we really are looking to not facilitate the discussions, but ask that the community work on these questions, which are what worked well, what can we do better? If anyone gets lost, it's pretty easy, and it's just a matter of our staff behind the scenes right now needs about a minute, but they will send a link, and it will say it will provide you a link to click, a button to click to take you into the breakout room. If for any reason that you are separated, you can go back to the original meeting link that you find on the agenda for the website, and it will take you back to the main room. At the end of the group sessions, we'll bring everybody back to the main room. We are asking if there's anyone that would like to be placed in a Spanish-speaking only breakout room. We'd like you to raise your hand via the icon at the most likely the bottom of the page on the right of your screen. And Priya, why don't I pause right now and ask, is there anything else you would like to help our community understand with respect to the breakout rooms?
Yes, thank you so much, Mark. That was a really great description. So I am looking right now to see if there are any hands for folks who would like to join a Spanish only room. And I'll just say to our interpreters, you can just stay as is for now. And while I'm looking for hands for the council members and staff who are floating, I just want to remind folks that what you'll do, you're going to get a little button that will say join. You'll join your room. And then for council members and staff, at the bottom of your screen, there will be 4 squares that will say breakout. And you will be able to touch on those 4 squares. And then if you want to go to another room, you can do that. If any of you have questions at all, I have the chat feature enabled and you can chat with me. I will be in the main room as a resource. Let me just see if there are any folks who want to do the Spanish only room. We have a lot of people here today. So I'm not seeing any. So I have created the breakout rooms. I tried my best to do them at random. So I am going to launch them. There will be a slight, you'll click the button and there will be a slight delay and then you will join.
Priya, could I just jump in with one thing? Is wanting folks to make sure that once they get in that breakout room, the group will have to decide amongst themselves, somebody to be a scribe to write down what is going to be reported out. That's my understanding.
And also to report out on behalf of the group.
Okay.
All right. With that, I'm going to launch the breakout rooms. We have 8 rooms. So I'm going to launch them right now. Again, make sure you click on join and you'll be moved to your room. I'm seeing that there are still some folks who need to join. So if you can make sure if you are getting a request, please join your room. Still seeing a few folks that are still here. You're welcome to join. Okay, good. I'm seeing some more folks who are leaving. I'm still seeing that there are some folks here who are in our main room. You are welcome to go to your breakout room that I've assigned you to. So I do see that for the folks who are here, I'll offer if anyone would like to have a conversation with me about anything that they want to share in terms of what worked well and what can we do better. So if anyone wants to have that conversation, I'm here and I would love to chat with you. Again, if anyone would like to have a conversation and talk about what we could do better and what went well, you can use the chat feature if you want to chat with me. I'm here and I'm interested in hearing what your thoughts are. Hi, Anne. I don't know if you saw, but you're welcome to join a breakout room if you'd like. Hi, Anne. I don't know if you can hear me, but you're welcome to join. I sent you a breakout room if you'd like to join that.
Okay,
Or
that'd
I'm
be
happy
fine.
to, okay, perfect. So let me see if I can do that.
I know, I think I
Um,
did something wrong there.
No
I'm sorry,
worries.
I
Okay,
had an important call that came in, unfortunately, so.
I totally get it. So let's see. I'm gonna see. I'm gonna try and move you to. Let's see. You should have a button. Did you get a button that you could click and join?
Boy, I don't see anything.
Okay. Hold on 1 second. Let me try this again.
Well, I have something that says breakout rooms. Would that be it?
Yeah,
Boy,
go ahead and click on that. There you go. Let's see if that works.
I have been assigned to breakout room 4.
Go ahead and
Okay.
click on that. Again, I've unmuted everyone. So if anyone here would like to join a breakout room, you should have one at the bottom of your screen. Marcy, I think if you're trying to say something, I actually can't hear you. I don't know if you're talking to me.
Hi, Priya.
Hi, Anna. How's it going?
I was in one breakout room so far, and there was one person, Rodney from the public, who couldn't unmute. And then there was Maya and Kathy, city staff.
Okay, I allowed Ronnie to go back. So he should, I told Maya how to get him to unmute. I don't know if she was able to do that.
Wasn't able to. But am I supposed to go in other rooms, or how does that work?
Yeah, so you can do that. So at the bottom of your screen, there should be the little 4 squares. So go ahead and click on that. And then you should be able to see who's in what room, and you can just go ahead and join. So
where are those 4 dots?
At the bottom of your screen, there might be a little 3 ellipses that you have to click on first that say breakout rooms.
Breakout rooms, okay.
Okay, do you see it?
It says I've been assigned to breakout room 7.
Yes, but you should be able to go into any room. So I can assign, let me see, I might be able to.
You'll see the other rooms. I think Kathy and Maya wanted another perspective, you know, from somebody that, since Rodney.
Sure.
Or like just to join another group, maybe.
Well, I see, yeah. Okay, so I can put you into a different breakout room if you'd like to join a different room.
I would, but I'm just communicating that I think Maya and Kathy, I think they thought they should be in a bigger room too.
Okay, yeah, I can move them out too then.
And
Let
Jesse
me.
was, I don't know, but Jesse.
Yeah, I moved him.
Okay.
Okay, would you like to go into a different room?
Sure. How long are we doing this?
I think another 10 minutes.
Okay.
I'm going to put you in breakout room 2.
Okay.
So I'm going to see if that works.
Okay, great.
Did you get an alert? Okay. Maya and Kathy, do you want to go into another room for the last 5 minutes?
I'm actually working right now.
Okay, totally fine. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks.
No worries at all.
Same.
Okay, perfect. Yep, no worries.
Hello.
I'm going to ask everyone to please mute themselves. So if everyone can please mute themselves, thank you. Again, I'll just ask everyone who's rejoining from the breakout sessions, if you can please mute yourself. So welcome back, everyone. If you can please mute yourself. Thank you. Okay, I'm gonna check and it looks like I believe Mark and Mayor Ellsworth, I believe that everyone is back from the breakout sessions.
Okay,
What I
great.
have done is I have allowed folks to, I've taken off the mute all. So when we call on people to do their report out, all they need to do is unmute themselves. If everyone could please mute yourself when you're not speaking, that would be great. Thank you.
Thank you. And Priya, do you have the structure of the different groups? Do you know how to call on the groups?
I'm happy to do that. I know that there were some groups that I ended up moving people in, so those groups ended up not having anyone. I will defer to Mark if you would like me to tell you what groups you should call, but you can start with one.
Right. We'll start with group one. First, I want to congratulate you, everyone, for being a Zoom expert now. You're living the life that we're living every day. And the use of these breakout rooms was a bit of a risk today, but we thought an interchange and a conversation could be helpful. So we appreciate your patience with that. And it's the first time we've really used this in a public meeting. So you're all rookies with us, and thanks for working with us. So with group one, do you have a reporter that can report out on items that worked well and recommendations for improvement? And by the way, we are recording this. We're going to take extensive notes. These notes will be produced and incorporated into the after action report. And I've heard a lot of great ideas in the conversations that I was a part of in group four. So group one, is there a reporter for group one that can unmute?
Who is group one, Jeff? Is that us?
That must be us. I wasn't sure what number we were in.
I'm not either. But if we are group one, then Mark, I've got the reporting here. If that's okay.
Sure.
Was group one Jeff Ellsworth?
Yes, it was.
Okay, then that's us. All right, I'm Greg Reynolds from Vineyard Valley Leadership, and we had a nice discussion, a wonderful discussion. One thing we all agreed on, I think, that went very well was the first responders. And I'm gonna add a little bit to this, but the presentation we got today was spectacular. We got a chance to really see what took place throughout this whole fire. I think what I walked away with on that awesome what went well was the reality that the pain for Vineyard Valley was the beginning of this fire from 2 o'clock to 4 o'clock on Monday morning. And so consequently, there's a disconnect between what went well and what we were able to see today and what many of our folks experienced in real time. Can you hear me still?
Yes.
Okay. So another thing that one of the things, so that went well, of course, all the folks that worked hard and over communicated to make this thing, to keep us safe after the initial flare up for us, I think was an important point. One of the things that we came away with was defensible space. The true defensible space, and I'm keeping this to Vineyard Valley, not just Pope Street, but Vineyard Valley. A lot of the defensible space around Vineyard Valley outside of the flood wall is in the river. And it's also in the banks that lead up to our wall. And so this is something that needs to improve because there's a lot of growth, there's weed growth and tree growth that takes place. And whenever we look over the wall in the midst of these, and that was some of the commentary, that's part of the fear. When we look at the defensible space that was presented tonight in terms of the wineries that were in better shape than the one that wasn't, that was a point. I think we can truly extend our defensible space, and we have to, by cleaning out Sulphur Creek and the Napa River as it surrounds the Vineyard Valley, that end of Pope Street. Let's see. The other thing we talked about that may be a future idea is an early warning system. An early warning system that would somehow give us the ability, somebody makes the call and we're able to hit a button and there'll be some sort of communication that will go out to cell phones, go out to computers, go out to alert. Nixle is of course that, but I think it's going to take more than Nixle. And I think we should probably review what Nixle took place that morning because there seemed to be a lot of confusion in that. So an early warning system, how can we enhance it? I guess, Jeff, would be the way that I would postulate what we had talked about. Let's see. And then I think inside the park, one thing that we can do that was brought up is internal communication. We have a number of people that are at risk in the park. We talked about that a little bit. We share a list with the fire department and the police department. We have our own list of people that we believe are incapacitated or at risk. I shared that there are some people that aren't really in a position to take care of themselves anymore. And Robin shared very kindly, and it's true, that there's a lot of people in the park that reach out and help their neighbors all the time. So how can we enhance that was one of the questions that we kind of walked away with. You know, I'll do whatever we can from a leadership and ownership perspective to assist from the inside out. And I think we can work with the city as well to determine if there's some systems that we could work on together that would maybe give an early warning in a more resolute way. That would be my report.
Thank you, Greg.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Group 2, is there a reporter for Group 2?
Are we Group 2? I'm Joe Schoendorf. Was I in Group 2?
Yes, that is Group 2.
Well, I'm Joe Schoendorf, and I live up here on the far eastern side of St. Helena, sort of the last house on the hill between St. Helena and the county. I want to echo, I was deeply impressed. I had a chance to meet personally with John today, Chief Sorensen. We were prepared. The fact that we had taken the red flag so seriously, any other Sunday morning at 4 a.m., there wouldn't have been anybody in the firehouse, and you know, how long would it have taken to get the engine going? So massive kudos to the preparation. And I think there's one more important set of kudos here, and that is the fact that we're doing this meeting. Whoever thought up the idea to, one, make this the subject, and then two, to get us all involved, deserves significant recognition. Now, challenges, you know, I'm the guy that John talked about. Our house did not burn, and we didn't really lose more than a couple trees because of two reasons. One, we had the technology of the thermal gel, but two, I'll be direct, I'm anal about making sure the property is cleared. And we don't keep branches that fall on the ground, and we don't keep grass, dried grass. It just gets vacuumed out. And one of the things that the fire guys told me when they were up here, and it almost ought to be a sign, if it isn't on the ground, it isn't going to burn. And if I drive up Big Rock Road and Helm Mountain Road, and we all drive up Silverado Trail, you look at all the brush that was on the ground and, you know, the ashes that are there, we probably need to redouble our efforts to clean up the whole area and just make it a number one priority that we're going to do that. And whether that means, I'm sitting here thinking about St. Helena is really a town in a valley. And there's big hills on both sides of it, the hill I live on and the hill on the other side. And, you use words like fire breaks and the Sierra Club and a whole bunch of people come down on you. But shouldn't somebody take a look at what would it take to make St. Helena safe so that these fires in the hills just could not come down and get us? So that was one of the issues we talked about. There was some deep concern, and it was interesting, about evacuations. The chief had done a good job of going around and talking to East Side and to the homes where the people live, and talked to the top people. But one of the ladies in our group said she had no communication. So the message about evacuations didn't get from the leaders of these villages down to the people who live there. And so the question is, how do we do a better job of getting the message out? Can we use the fire siren system? Can we put speakers out? How do we get the message down to the person who's, kind of all by themselves out there so that they know what's going on? And I think that was an issue. And then my issue, and kind of the last one, is I spent my life in Silicon Valley, and I'm kind of a tech guy. There is so much new fire technology that we should be looking at deploying. And every time you talk about new technology, there's a cost issue. But the question will then be, is it cheaper to put in this new technology or to rebuild part of the town? And I would leave you with one thought. I also have a home in Big Sur, and we've had 3 years in a row. We've had fires almost every year. You live in Big Sur, you cannot buy fire insurance at about the 100% level. And I think that, Mark, the big issue in a meeting this time next year from all the people who live in St. Helena is going to be, why did my fire insurance get canceled and why do I have to use state insurance? And I think we need to be prepared to face that and figure out what we're going to do about it. A lot more I could say, but that's a quick summary.
Thank you for those comments. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Joe. Let's finishing up notes. Okay, group 3. I think we have a total of 4 groups that are reporting out today. So we'll move to group 3.
So I believe Supervisor Dillon, you were part of this group.
I believe so. It's group 3. I think it's we literally played paper, scissors, rock to see who'd have to do this, and I lost. So my name is Bernard Loper. I'm also up on Big Rock, and I'm right next to Joe. So I'm not going to repeat what a lot of the things we've heard tonight. So I'll try to hit on the points that maybe we have not heard. So what worked well? I think we have to keep in mind that a lot of this worked very well, and it worked under very difficult circumstances. All the normal things that we have to deal with in a situation like this, on top of having COVID. So I think that's a big plus to everyone involved. I think what worked well, and maybe where we can stand from some room for improvement, are some of the same things. Communication. So some of the feedback we had in our group, and by the way, our group was Diane Dillon, Gigi Densberger, Mary Corpusine, and then we monopolized Chief John Sorensen for quite some time also. But one of the things that came up was, as a positive, was the press releases. They were quick and to the point. They came out on a regular basis. Someone who was evacuated, I was looking at those pretty much 3 times a day. I was desperate for information, and that was a great source. Now on the same time, it's my understanding that the text messages didn't go out until the 30th, so a couple days after the fire. So communication there maybe needs to be looked at. We've heard tonight about city, county, state, federal, everyone having their kind of like their little piece of the action, and it sounds like there might need to be some better integration as we go forward. Our group also talked about prevention. We had the good fortune to have Chief John with us. We talked a little bit about defensible space, And then it was great to have Diane talk about the fact that the county is thinking about a home hardening ordinance. So, to deal with prevention. So things like there isn't like, mulch right up against the house. It has to be at least 5 feet away, things of that nature. And I think that pretty much is going to cover what we discussed in group 3 tonight. So thank you.
Thank you for those comments.
Great comments. And I imagine home hardening also includes potentially different types of roof structures other than wood. Is that something you talked about?
I'll let Diane speak to that, but it was my understanding that that would actually not be required initially. Like Joe, I suspect that insurance companies down the road are going to say, "Oh, you've got an old wood shake roof. Before we insure you, you're going to have something that's that's fireproof." That's absolutely coming.
There's a lot of low cost things people can do. If I can just jump in, with venting, and the kind of windows, and these things can be when you replace, when you re-roof, put those things in if you're not doing new construction, but on remodeling or whatever.
Terrific. So I was a part of group 4, and Janine is our scribe. Janine. I think you just have to unmute. There we go.
Mark got 3 of us from Vineyard Valley in a small group. So what went right was we didn't burn down. And the fire department did an excellent job of keeping it out of Vineyard Valley. Unbeknownst to us on that night at 3 in the morning when we were all evacuating, we didn't think there was any chance for our park to be kept safe. So they did a great job on that. And what we talked about in the meeting was to have a police and fire plan. I believe there's one in place, but it definitely needs constant updating. A greater communication between the city, between management, and between residents. Many residents that don't use electronics are going to need something like a high-low siren or a megaphone or some way of maybe the city keeping us informed, because we had no information. Another point brought up by Mary Koberstein was an additional exit from Vineyard Valley. We are a community that has one exit unless we were to go out the back gate and over the levee, which can be done, but that would have to take the city to do that planning. Another biggie would be, would it be helpful if we had a meeting every year before fire season? And we agreed that yes, it would be very helpful to have that. And we could go over the plans. And also the vice mayor brought up maybe a trial evacuation for the park, that there are some places that are required to do this. So that's what we discussed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So,
Thank you.
so it's clear we're in a new reality with fire and fire preparedness. And as challenging as these discussions are, we have an opportunity looking forward to enhance all of our systems, looking at communication, looking at tech, looking at defensible space, looking at things like meetings and drills. We all did those in school to be prepared. I think we have to rethink sort of how we approach this and be more proactive and more combined as a community. We're gonna now take some time for public comment if folks have individual public comment to bring out. And what we want to do is just continue cataloging, inventorying, and then assessing what we have. And a meeting like this gives us that opportunity, and then we can prioritize how we move forward so that next year We're more prepared than this year. And each subsequent year, we just get better at this. I know that in Marin County, they had worked towards a concept of a culture of preparedness. And if that's where we need to work towards. So with that, and we're there, a lot of things we do, give it to you in just a sec, Mark. A lot of things we have done have been incredible, as you can see, getting through these, but we can always do more. So with that, Mark.
Mayor, I understand there were 8 groups, and so we have a representative from Group 8 that would like to report out. I was told 5, 6, and 7 wouldn't, but I made an assumption that there wasn't a Group 8.
Thank you, Mark. Yes, there was a group 8, only with 2 people, with Julie from Brianna House and I, and Justin was there for a moment, and Claudia, the interpreter, was there for a moment. So we want to report what worked well. Obviously, as people said, the work of the firefighters, that the city didn't burn. The communications were all bilingual, so that worked well. The fact that the LAC, that's the what's LAC stands for?
The Local Assistance Center.
Local Assistance Center, thank you. That the fact that there was one established after the fires in St. Helena at the First Presbyterian Church. So there was one up Valley, that was very good. The link to the communications map where there was not only the areas, but also the roads that were closed. So that's important. And another thing that worked well is that we were already familiar with the communications team because of COVID. So, Stephanie, Amalia, that same team was able to continue. So having the same people in the communications team work because people already established who to go to. So it worked well that from COVID went to fire and it was the same team. So that worked well. Things that could be improved, as Janine was saying, is the preparation. So maybe we need to have it can be the meetings in Vineyard Valley or in different places. So in the preparedness meetings, also, we know we have them because Diane has participated, Jeff, we know we have them, but also include more information about evacuation. What is the difference between mandatory and voluntary? When do you have to? How do you have to? How the decisions are made, so people understand more about that. And also, why do we need to put that tag for evacuation that the police was distributing, like we've evacuated? Why is important? So on those meetings have that, and also have it on the city website. And since Jesse is here, if he's still here, also have the newspaper do a whole series of preparedness. Like Jesse could be interviewing the different first responders on what to do. So because people, especially seniors, read the paper all the time. So that the paper is very important for preparation. Another one is also to evaluate and support daycare and senior care facilities. So Vineyard Valley, it's a unit, but there's also, we have Silverado Orchards, and then we have 3 other small care facilities of seniors. So we were wondering what the city can do to evaluate how prepared they are and how to follow up with them, so they also are ready to evacuate when it needs to. Another also in preparation is fund or facilitate digital divide workshops, because we have that digital divide based on age and based on language at least. So maybe have the library provide digital divide workshops so people understand that the cell phone is an emergency, how to use it, how to get the nixels, make sure that everybody's enrolled, etc. Another one is the need to repair the numbers, need to repaint the numbers on the curves, because something you need to say, oh yeah, so this house evacuated, or nobody knows the numbers because some houses have it really small, so either repaint them all in the curves or provide what the fire council was talking about, some visible, really visible numbers for each house. That will help the firefighters and will help the neighbors. Another one is to investigate Calistoga they are masters in evacuation just because they have them all the time. So maybe talk a lot more about what they do they have smooth evacuations for the mobile home parks. So just talk more about with them. And also the communication. Some of us were able to receive communications that were sent by Calistoga and by St. Helena. And the Calistoga ones were a lot more detailed. And they told us that somebody in Calistoga told me that because they're part of some system that we are not, that the city is not. I don't remember what. So just talk to Calistoga about the communications. And the last one, make sure that in all the first responding teams, they are bilingual or multilingual based on how the city's population is languages needs are. In the police station all the time, in the staff, in the firefighters and the hospital, because there were some moments that, and I'm going to say, Jeff was out there outside the police station helping people. And sometimes he needed to look for a volunteer to help support translation. So that's great. And that's why the community is there. But it will be very important to always have bilingual people in those fire responding teams all the time. So, but in general, we love living here and the city is doing amazing. And as somebody said, thank you for doing this meeting as well.
Thank you for that, Norma. Are there any council comments before we go to the public comment section? I'll just take a quick look here. I'm seeing none. So Mark, do you have any thoughts before we move to the public comment?
No, we're ready for the public comment.
Okay, great. So I'll, Ms. Nixon, Priya, can you see if somebody's putting a hand up?
Yeah, so I'm looking right now to see if anyone has a hand raised, and I'll just remind folks that it's at the bottom or the top of the screen. There should be a little raised hand icon. That should be
And we're
at
doing
the
our
bottom.
Where is it?
And we're doing our 4-minute regular timing this evening. It's my understanding.
Perhaps Mayor Ellsworth, if folks maybe aren't able to locate it, it is at the bottom. Could people raise their hands, and would that be an option?
Sure, if they want to raise their hand on the screen, let's take a look and see if anybody's got their hand up. Right now, I'm going through both screens. I'm not seeing a physical hand up.
We do have.
Mayor?
I have Joe.
Yes.
Yeah. One thing we haven't discussed tonight that I think there's a lot of neighborhood discussion is cleanup. What are the ordinances in St. Helena today, and what should they be so that we can get this city back to being as beautiful as it was before the summer fires?
Mark, do you have any thoughts on?
To clarify, are we referring to trees that are in the mountains, or are these limbs that are on the ground? We're just a little context on tree cleanup. It's one of the most costly expenditures for the city and the county coming out of the fires. We have to clear access to our water treatment plant, water tanks, things like that, and we've spent a lot of money. The good news is most of it's reimbursable through the state and the federal government, but we are clearing access to our critical facilities. We don't have the ability to clear trees on private property. So I want to make sure I understand specifically the recommendation.
Well, I think what I'm really talking about is private property. If I look at Big Rock Road and Brittany and Howell Mountain, some of the neighbors, Bernard Lauper's on here, and he has done a perfect job of vacuum cleaning his property. Other neighbors haven't done anything. And the question is, what are the strength of the ordinances so that the neighborhood can go to them and say, you have a personal responsibility to clean up, and the St. Helena ordinances say you have to. I'm going to be very direct. Or if we don't, some of these houses a year from now are still going to have dead trees and black all over. It's just the way people are. Not everybody is like Bernard, if you will, or like some of my other neighbors.
Chief Sorensen, do you have any comments beyond the existing ordinance? We know that there are opportunities for fire mitigation through clearing. There are grants available from time to time. Do you want to comment on anything from a private property perspective?
Yeah, private property in the urban interface, especially up on Big Rock Road, is, around the house is one thing, but when you have a task like Diane has and Chief Bellier with 720 square miles of Napa County, it's just an immense amount of job. I mean, you'd have to take down every tree and every bush, brush to say, okay, this won't burn, and that's just not going to happen. But especially in the urban interface around homes, yes, that needs to be addressed. And we don't have a lot. We have 8 homes on Brittany Lane, and then we have several up on Spring Mountain Road above the lower reservoir that are the most the biggest issue for city limits in the urban interface.
If the city simply said, clean up your house, that would be sufficient, if you put an ordinance weight behind it. And that most people are going to do it naturally, some won't. The ordinance will compel peer pressure in the neighborhood that says, if you don't do it, the city's going to come in and do it and charge you.
That's correct. We've done it in the past. It isn't easy, but it needs to be done.
Well, certainly also this speaks to a new reality of fire and the timelines. We're seeing more of it. And so these concepts that in the past may not have shown up but once every 10 years now are showing up every couple of years. So it does speak to looking at what we have in terms of tools in our toolbox to, create measures to make sure that people are cleaning up and moving forward.
You have this motto, which I love, St. Helena strong all day long. I'd like to see it modified to be St. Helena safe and strong all day long.
I like that. I like that. Okay, so I'm seeing Robin with a hand up.
Just quickly, I bring this up every time we have a fire because I only moved to St. Helena 3 days prior to the 2017 fires. So right away, my son, of course, informed me about Nixle, signed up right away. The problem for anyone who's new, which occurs in Vineyard Valley a lot, is that we don't know the names of the roads. And when you get an emergency alert, you want the information in front of you to be simple and concise. So I didn't know where Glassfire Mountain was until this year. So I'm learning every year. But we don't know where the roads are when it says people on this road are evacuating. I have to get onto Google Maps if the internet is not down and try and find it. Oh, I'm losing valuable time. And I know it's probably not anyone here's responsibility to update or change Nixle, but I just want that word to continue to go out, and possibly one day it will find the right ear and we will get map links on Nixle, which is my request.
That's a good point to put in. Are we seeing any additional public comment, Priya? I'm seeing Miriam. We've still got, oh, there we go.
Okay. My daughter lives in Woodbridge Village. Some person, unknown person, came to her door at 4:30 in the morning that Monday, September 28th, went door to door and told everyone to get out. I'd like to know, when you speak to the manager at Woodbridge, who that was. They had a bunch of elderly disabled people at 4:30 in the morning trying to find a way to get a car. People didn't have a car. There was no help from any public organization. I think that was totally unnecessary. The chance of Woodbridge burning, it's right in the middle of town, were near to zero. And I think it caused a lot of unnecessary anguish to the people who live there. And
Do
it
you
also
have any,
appears that you didn't
was there
have,
any indication of who that was?
I think it was the gardener. I'm not sure. It sounded like that you didn't have the correct telephone number for the manager at Woodbridge. And that is something that should never happen. Woodbridge needs to see to it that the police department and the city authorities know who the manager is and what his telephone number is. And secondly, I'd like to reiterate that Vineyard Valley needs a second exit. If you think about Pope Street, with everyone on Stonebridge, possibly people coming out of Silverado Orchards, everyone coming out of Vineyard Valley, all to the same street at the same time. If the fire was bearing down in that area, there would be such a traffic jam that people could die on Pope Street. So that gate that's in the flood wall on the north side of Vineyard Valley is locked by the city. And if that would be a really good emergency exit, but I don't think Vineyard Valley has the keys to it. So I think that is something that the city should work out with Vineyard Valley managers to make sure that gate could be opened in a real catastrophe, which could have well happened if the wind had changed. I mean, as it was, it sounded like everyone was sure the wind was blowing away from Vineyard Valley, but it could just as easily have changed direction and blown toward Vineyard Valley or anyone else in that area. So things could have been much worse, much worse. And by the time the evacuation warning came on Wednesday morning, everybody was already gone. When it was Monday morning that the alert should have come out, or somebody should have done something. I don't know what, but and the power was out. So if you're sending out Nixle alerts in the middle of the night during a power outage, nobody's going to get them. Maybe on their cell phones, but most people are asleep during the night. Several of those alerts went out at midnight or 4 in the morning. People who are in their beds aren't going to get that. So there's needs to figure out another way to alert people if indeed that is, especially if it was an evacuation order. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you for the comments. And I think that speaks to the importance of a meeting like this, where we identify areas where we can improve and look for the measures that we can bring in so that as these things occur in the future, luckily, hopefully they won't, but if they do, we'll be more prepared and have better systems of communication and alert. Are we seeing additional hands? I'm looking through the screens and not seeing any. Ms. Nixon?
I'm not seeing any additional raised hands, and I'm also looking to see if anyone has used the raise hand button, and I am not seeing any.
Okay, so with that, then I'll bring it back to the council. Are there any comments at this point or questions from the council? And I'm looking and seeing, I'm not seeing the vice mayor. Let me see if I'm seeing him on a different screen. I'm not seeing any comments from the council. So what we're going to do is take in this information and inventory it and assess it. And it's wonderful to have Supervisor Dillon here. This is a dialogue that the city and the county, this is an important step in our enhanced communication. So taking this information, taking these pieces, putting them together, looking at what we have, and frankly, being as proactive as we can so that by the time we're in another fire season, and hopefully we get some rain here and move completely out of this one, we'll be further along. Mr. Presswich, do you have any thoughts at this point?
Just that as we move forward on this after action report, some of the conversation tonight might prompt additional thinking. If you're like me, you'll wake up in the middle of the night with a great idea and you want to jot it down. We want to hear from you. And so the public comment and the feedback period of time does not cease. We're committed to continuous improvement. If you have a new idea tomorrow or next week or next month, please send it to me and I will pass it along and work with the police chief on incorporating comments into our after action report. We're very interested in your thoughts and your ideas, and I anticipate there may be new ideas that emerge from this meeting. So I just want to thank everyone for their time and their feedback today. It's been very helpful. You've come up with a number of good ideas, and part of our job is to inventory those and then share that with the council along with other internal recommendations. We're going to begin interviewing all of our department directors along with some additional key staff that were involved in different elements of the disaster response. And we're looking for our staff to provide recommendations as well. A number of the ideas that came out of 2017 are in motion still and also activated, and it's helped us as an organization be better prepared. So my thanks to everyone tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. And we want to circle back in as we get into the new year, and the county has been working with us in terms of preparedness meetings over the last few years, and we want to keep that up and keep everybody engaged and figuring out how we can implement new ideas and be as ready as we can be as a community and working together as a community. So with that, I'll thank our chiefs for being here, Chief Sorensen, Chief Hartley, our staff, city manager, and our council, very much appreciated, Supervisor Dillon, and our community for being here and giving us input. So thank you very much. And we will work with this information. And as Mark said, any other suggestions, thoughts, please keep them coming forward. And so if I'm seeing no other hands or business to attend to, I will adjourn the meeting and wish you all a good evening, and we'll circle back soon and we'll all be safe and strong together. So thank you very much.